A man walks into a five-star hotel wearing old boots and carrying a beaten-up suitcase. The manager laughs at him, mocks him, offers him a deal he's sure this nobody can't afford. But when the man opens that suitcase, everything changes. And that was just the beginning. The afternoon sun blazed through the towering glass doors of the Regal Crest Hotel, casting long golden shadows across its polished marble floors. Everything about the place screamed luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks from the vaulted ceilings. Soft piano music drifted from hidden speakers. Well-dressed guests glided through the lobby as if they owned the world, their designer luggage rolling smoothly behind them on wheels that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. This wasn't just a hotel. It was a temple of wealth, a fortress where only the elite were truly welcome, and everyone who worked there knew it. Everyone who stayed there felt it. You either belonged or you didn't. There was no in-between. And on this particular afternoon, a man walked through those gleaming doors who, by all appearances, did not belong at all. His name was Elias Romero. He wore a faded plaid shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, old denim jeans that had seen better days, and a pair of scuffed leather boots that looked like they'd walked through every back road in the country. His hair was slightly messy, his face weathered by years under the sun, and in his calloused hand he carried a single battered leather suitcase that had more character than style. He didn't stride in with confidence. He didn't announce himself. He simply walked in quietly, his eyes taking in the grandeur around him with the calm curiosity of someone who had seen enough of life not to be easily impressed. But the lobby noticed him immediately. Heads turned, conversations paused. A woman in a fur stole whispered something to her companion, and they both glanced over with thinly veiled judgment. A bellhop near the entrance exchanged a look with the concierge, a look that said, "Did he walk into the wrong building?" Even the security guard by the elevator straightened up, his hand drifting slightly toward his radio as if preparing for some kind of disturbance. Elias felt it all, the stares, the silent conclusions, the invisible wall that seemed to rise up around him the moment he stepped inside, but he didn't react. He'd learned a long time ago that people see what they want to see, and right now, all they saw was a man who didn't fit their picture of success. He walked steadily toward the front desk, his boots making soft, deliberate sounds against the marble. Behind the counter stood two people. One was a young woman named Maya, her uniform crisp and professional, her expression neutral, but her eyes kind. The other was Harvey Whitman, the general manager. Harvey was the kind of man who wore his authority like cologne, thick and impossible to ignore. His suit was tailored, his hair slicked back, his smile sharp and calculating. He had the look of someone who had clawed his way up and now relished every moment of looking down. When Elias approached, Maya stepped forward with a polite smile. But before she could speak, Harvey raised a hand and stepped in front of her, his eyes already scanning Elias from head to toe with the precision of an appraiser at an auction. And what he saw, clearly, did not impress him. Harvey's smile was thin and cold, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He leaned slightly against the counter, arms crossed, and tilted his head as if he were about to deliver a punchline. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. The question itself was innocent enough, but the way he said it made it clear he didn't believe Elias had any real business being there. Elias set his suitcase down gently and met Harvey's gaze with calm, steady eyes. "Yes," he said simply. "I'd like to check in. I have a reservation." Harvey's eyebrows lifted in exaggerated surprise. He glanced over at Maya, then back at Elias, as if sharing a private joke. "A reservation," he repeated slowly, drawing out the words. "Here, at the Regal Crest?" Elias nodded. "That's right." There was no defensiveness in his voice, no irritation, just quiet confidence. But Harvey wasn't interested in hearing more. He reached over to the computer, his fingers tapping the keys with theatrical flair. his eyes flicking back and forth between the screen and Elias as if he were watching a comedy unfold. After a moment, he stopped typing and looked up with a smirk. "Well, I see a reservation under the name Romero, but I have to be honest with you, sir," he said, his voice loud enough now that a few nearby guests had started to pay attention. "This is a 5-star establishment. Our cheapest room is $800 a night. Cash up front, no exceptions." He paused, letting the number hang in the air like a challenge. "So unless you've got that kind of money on you right now, I'm afraid we're going to have a problem." A few guests had gathered near the sitting area now, pretending to check their phones or adjust their luggage, but clearly listening. One man in a cashmere coat whispered something to his wife, and they both chuckled. A teenage girl with oversized sunglasses snapped a photo in Elias's direction, probably already drafting a caption about the random guy trying to check into a luxury hotel. Harvey noticed the attention and seemed to feed off it. His smirk widened. He leaned forward now, lowering his voice just enough to seem conspiratorial, but still loud enough for others to hear. "Tell you what," he said, his tone dripping with mock generosity. "I'll make you a deal. If you can actually afford our cheapest room, if you can pay for it right here, right now, in cash, I'll personally upgrade you to the presidential suite. Top floor. Best view in the city. On the house." He crossed his arms, clearly pleased with himself. "How's that sound?" The lobby had gone almost silent now. Even the piano music seemed softer. All eyes were on Elias. Some people were smiling. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to laugh or look away. Maya, still standing behind the counter, looked mortified. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but Harvey shot her a glance that made her close it again. Elias didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice or show any sign of anger. He simply looked at Harvey for a long, quiet moment, the kind of moment that felt heavier than it should, and then, without a word, he reached down and lifted his old leather suitcase onto the counter. The sound it made was solid, deliberate. He clicked open the brass latches, which were tarnished but still strong, and slowly lifted the lid. Inside, neatly stacked and bound with rubber bands, were rows of crisp $100 bills. The sight of it sent a ripple through the lobby. Someone gasped. The man in the cashmere coat stopped mid-chuckle. The teenage girl's phone nearly slipped from her hand. Even Harvey, for all his smugness, seemed to freeze for a split second, his smile faltering like a candle in the wind. Elias didn't rush. He didn't make a show of it. With the same calm, unhurried movements he'd used since entering the hotel, he reached into the suitcase and pulled out 8 neat stacks of bills. He placed them on the counter one by one, each landing with a soft but unmistakable thud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, $800. Exact change. The lobby was so quiet now, you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Harvey stared at the money as if it had materialized out of thin air. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. His face had gone pale, then flushed red, cycling through emotions faster than he could process them. Shock, embarrassment, confusion. And beneath it all, the creeping realization that he had made a terrible mistake. Elias reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. From it, he produced a driver's license, a business card, and what looked like a sleek black credit card with no logo, just a name embossed in silver. He laid them all out next to the cash, his movements precise and unbothered. "That should cover the room," Elias said quietly, his voice steady and polite. "And if you need any further verification, my accountant is available by phone." Harvey's eyes darted from the money to the documents to Elias's face, as if trying to solve a puzzle that had just turned inside out. He picked up the business card with trembling fingers and read it aloud, almost involuntarily. "Elias Romero, Golden Fields Estate, Agricultural Investments and Livestock Consultation." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Maya, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes, quickly stepped forward and began processing the payment, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She didn't look at Harvey. She didn't need to. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. But Elias wasn't done. He pulled his phone from his pocket, an older model but well-maintained, and tapped the screen a few times. Then he placed it on the counter and pressed the speaker button. The line rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Romero Holdings, this is Catherine speaking." "Catherine, it's Elias," he said calmly. "I'm checking into the Regal Crest in Riverdale. Just wanted to confirm my appointment tomorrow at the livestock auction and make sure the purchasing budget is cleared." There was a brief pause, the sound of typing in the background. "Yes, Mr. Romero. Everything's set. You're cleared for up to $3.2 million, and the secondary account has another $1 million in reserve if needed. Mr. Callahan from the auction house confirmed your VIP seating this morning." "Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. Of course, enjoy your stay." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The effect was immediate and devastating. The whispers that had been circling the lobby now turned from mockery to shock. The man in the cashmere coat looked like he'd swallowed something sour. The teenage girl deleted her photo. And Harvey, poor Harvey, looked like the ground beneath him had turned to quicksand. He stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea." Elias looked at him, not with anger, but with something worse, disappointment. "You didn't ask," he said simply, and those 3 words carried more weight than any insult ever could. Maya finished processing the payment and handed Elias a sleek key card. "You're all set, Mr. Romero, room 418, and I apologize for any inconvenience." Her voice was sincere, almost pleading. Elias gave her a kind nod. "Thank you, miss. You've been very professional." He was about to pick up his suitcase when the elevator doors at the far end of the lobby opened with a soft chime. Out stepped a man in his late 60s, silver-haired and dignified, wearing an expensive but understated suit. His presence commanded respect without demanding it. He carried a leather briefcase and moved with the ease of someone who had seen the world and earned his place in it. The moment he saw Elias, his face lit up. "Elias!" he called out, his voice warm and genuine. He crossed the lobby in long strides, arms open. "Good God, it's been too long." Elias turned and his face broke into the first real smile he'd shown since entering the hotel. "Leonard!" The 2 men embraced, the kind of hug that spoke of years of friendship, mutual respect, and shared history. Harvey watched, his confusion deepening into dread. Dr. Leonard Hayes pulled back from the hug, still gripping Elias by the shoulders, his eyes sparkling with genuine affection. "I heard you were in town for the auction tomorrow. I was going to call you tonight, but here you are." "What are the odds?" he laughed, the kind of easy, unguarded laugh that only comes from true friendship. Elias chuckled softly. "Good timing, I suppose. Just got in. Thought I'd stay somewhere comfortable for the night before the chaos tomorrow." Leonard nodded knowingly. "Smart man. That auction's going to be insane. I heard there are buyers flying in from 3 different continents. You're going after the Highland heifers, aren't you?" "Among other things," Elias replied with a slight grin. "Depends on what catches my eye." Leonard turned toward the front desk, finally noticing the peculiar scene frozen behind the counter. Harvey stood there, pale and rigid, still holding Elias's business card like it might explode. Maya had her hands folded professionally, but her eyes darted nervously between the 2 older men, and scattered across the counter were 8 stacks of $100 bills, Elias's identification, and that mysterious black card that seemed to absorb the light around it. Leonard's smile faded slightly, replaced by curiosity, and then slowly a flicker of understanding. He looked from the money to Harvey to Elias, and his expression hardened. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his tone still polite, but now edged with something sharper. Harvey opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat worked uselessly, his face now a deep, blotchy red. Elias waved a hand gently, as if brushing away a fly. Nothing that can't be handled, Leonard. Just a small misunderstanding. But Leonard wasn't the type to let things go so easily. He had spent 40 years as a trauma surgeon, then another decade consulting for hospitals and medical charities across the globe. He knew people, he knew power dynamics, and he knew when someone had been disrespected. He turned fully toward Harvey now, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. "You do realize," Leonard said slowly, "that you're speaking to Elias Romero, owner of Golden Fields Estate, one of the largest sustainable livestock operations in the region. A man who has consulted for the Department of Agriculture, partnered with universities on soil restoration projects, and personally funded rural education programs that have changed entire communities." He paused, letting each word land like a stone dropping into still water. He's also one of the most respected agricultural investors in the country. People fly to him for advice. Corporations court him for partnerships, and you're standing there acting like he wandered in off the street. The lobby had gone completely silent. No one moved. No one even pretended not to be listening anymore. Every eye was locked on the front desk. Harvey looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. His hands trembled as he set the business card down carefully, as if it might shatter. I didn't know," he whispered hoarsely. "I swear, I didn't." "That's the problem," Leonard cut him off, his voice still calm but unyielding. "You didn't know. And instead of treating a guest with basic dignity and respect, you chose to humiliate him in public, for your own amusement." Harvey's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Tears were beginning to well in his eyes now, not from sadness but from sheer panic. His career, his reputation, everything he'd built was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Elias placed a gentle hand on Leonard's arm. "It's all right, my friend, really." But Leonard shook his head. "No, Elias, it's not all right. This is exactly the kind of behavior that needs to be called out. Judging people by their appearance, by their clothes, by whether or not they look like they belong. It's shallow, it's cruel, and it has no place in the establishment that calls itself prestigious." He turned back to Harvey one last time. "You should be ashamed of yourself." And with that, Leonard picked up his briefcase, gave Elias a firm pat on the back, and gestured toward the elevator. "Come on, let's get you settled. We'll catch up over dinner. I know a place nearby that serves the best lamb you've ever had, raised by a farmer I think you'd actually appreciate." Elias nodded, but before he could move, he turned back to the counter and looked directly at Maya. "Thank you for your professionalism," he said warmly. "It didn't go unnoticed." Maya's face flushed with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, sir. It was my pleasure." Then Elias's eyes shifted to Harvey, too. The manager was visibly shaking now, his hands gripping the edge of the counter as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. Elias didn't speak right away. He just looked at him, long and steady. The way a teacher might look at a student who had failed, not because they lacked ability, but because they hadn't tried. And then, in a voice that was quiet but clear enough for the entire lobby to hear, Elias said, "You made an assumption about me the moment I walked in. You saw my boots, my shirt, my suitcase, and you decided I wasn't worth your respect. You didn't ask my name, you didn't check your system properly, you didn't treat me like a guest. You treated me like a problem. And then you tried to embarrass me in front of strangers for your own entertainment." Harvey's lips trembled. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry." Elias nodded slowly. "I believe you are. But sorry isn't enough." Elias reached into the inner pocket of his worn jacket and pulled out a slim black leather folder. He opened it carefully, revealing a set of documents inside, neatly organized and official-looking. He placed the folder on the counter and slid it toward Harvey. "Go ahead," Elias said quietly. "Take a look." Harvey's hands shook as he picked up the folder. His eyes scanned the first page, then widened in horror. His face went from red to white in an instant. He flipped to the second page, then the third, as if hoping he'd misread something, as if there was some mistake that would make this all go away. But there was no mistake. The documents were clear: deed of ownership, corporate registration, tax filings, all bearing the name Elias Romero, and all listing the same asset, the Regal Crest Hotel. Harvey's knees buckled slightly. He grabbed the counter to steady himself, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. You own this hotel?" His voice was barely a whisper, strangled and disbelieving. Elias nodded calmly. "For 3 years now. Bought it as part of a real estate investment portfolio. I don't get involved in the day-to-day operations. I trust my management teams to run things properly, to treat guests with respect and dignity, and to uphold the reputation of the establishments I own." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But every now and then, I like to visit. Quietly, unannounced, just to see how things are really running when no one knows the owner is watching." The lobby erupted in whispers now, no longer restrained. People were pulling out their phones, some recording, others frantically typing messages. The man in the cashmere coat looked utterly mortified. The teenage girl had gone pale, and Harvey, poor Harvey, looked like a man staring into the abyss. Leonard, standing beside Elias, crossed his arms and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He'd seen his friend do this before, not out of cruelty, but out of principle. Elias didn't flaunt his wealth. He didn't need to. But he also refused to tolerate disrespect, especially the kind rooted in arrogance and prejudice. "I've stayed in 12 of my properties over the past 2 years," Elias continued, his voice still calm, but carrying a quiet authority that filled the space. "Some in the city, some in small towns, and in every single one I've been treated well. Not because they knew who I was, but because they understood basic hospitality. They understood that every guest, no matter how they look or where they come from, deserves to be welcomed." He gestured around the opulent lobby, at the chandeliers and marble and gold accents. "All of this beauty, this luxury, it means nothing if the people running it have forgotten what service actually means. You don't serve appearances, Mr. Whitman. You serve people." Harvey was trembling now, tears streaming down his face. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Please, Mr. Romero. I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll make it right. Just please, don't fire me. I have a family. I have bills. I've worked so hard to get here. Please." Elias looked at him for a long moment, and there was no satisfaction in his eyes, no glee at watching someone grovel. If anything, there was sadness, disappointment. The kind of disappointment you feel when you see potential wasted, when you see someone who should know better making choices that hurt others and themselves. "I'm not going to fire you," Elias said finally. Harvey's face lit up with desperate hope. Thank you so much. I swear I'll never..." "But I'm going to transfer you," Elias continued, cutting him off. The hope drained from Harvey's face as quickly as it had appeared. "You're going to leave this hotel, you're going to leave this city, and you're going to come work at my ranch. Golden Fields Estate. You'll start as an assistant groundskeeper. You'll work with the livestock, mend fences, clean stables, help with feed distribution. You'll get your hands dirty. You'll sweat. You'll work alongside people who don't care what suit you used to wear or what title you used to have. You'll learn what honest work feels like. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn a little humility along the way." Harvey stared at him, stunned. A ranch hand? An assistant," Elias corrected, "with room and board provided, a fair wage, and the opportunity to rebuild yourself into someone better than the man I met today. You can accept or you can resign. The choice is yours." Harvey stood frozen, his mind clearly racing, trying to process what had just happened, trying to figure out if this was mercy or punishment or some strange combination of both. Finally, he nodded, his voice barely audible. "I'll go. I'll do it." Elias extended his hand. Harvey hesitated, then took it, shaking weakly. "Good," Elias said. "Report to the estate next Monday. Someone will be in touch with the details." He released Harvey's hand and turned to Maya, who had been watching the entire scene with wide, astonished eyes. "Miss Maya, is it?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." You handled yourself with grace and professionalism today, even when it would have been easy to go along with the crowd. That takes character. I'm promoting you to interim general manager, effective immediately. HR will contact you tomorrow to make it official. Maya's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll treat every guest who walks through that door with the respect they deserve, Elias said gently. That's all I ask. I will, she promised, her voice thick with emotion. I swear I will. Elias picked up his battered leather suitcase from the counter, the same suitcase that had drawn so many judgmental stares just minutes ago. It felt lighter now, though nothing about it had changed. He glanced once more around the lobby, at the faces still watching him, some with shame, some with admiration, others with a new understanding of what had just unfolded before them. Leonard clapped him on the shoulder. You never cease to amaze me, my friend. Elias smiled faintly. I just believe people deserve a chance to be better, even when they don't think they need one. The two men walked toward the elevator, their footsteps echoing softly across the marble floor. Behind them, Maya was already on the phone, her voice steady and professional as she began coordinating with the hotel staff. Harvey remained at the counter, motionless, staring at the documents still spread out before him, the reality of his new life beginning to sink in. As the elevator doors slid open, Elias turned back one last time. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, reaching every corner of that grand, glittering lobby. Wealth isn't about what you wear or how you arrive. It's not about marble floors or crystal chandeliers. Real wealth is in how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. Because the truth is, everyone is important. Every single person who walks through that door has a story, has dignity, has worth. And the moment you forget that, you've lost something far more valuable than money. The elevator doors closed. The lobby remained silent for several long seconds, as if the building itself was holding its breath. And then, slowly, life resumed. Guests returned to their conversations. Staff returned to their duties, but something had shifted, something fundamental. A lesson had been taught, not with cruelty, but with clarity, and those who witnessed it would carry it with them long after they checked out. Later that evening, Elias and Leonard sat in a quiet corner of a small restaurant tucked away from the main streets, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise because the people who mattered already knew about it. They shared stories, laughed about old times, and spoke about the auction the next day. Elias never mentioned the hotel incident again. He didn't need to. For him, it was already settled, a problem identified, a solution implemented, a chance for growth offered. That was how he had always lived his life, not seeking recognition, not chasing status, but simply doing what he believed was right, and hoping quietly that it made some small difference. And it did. Back at the Regal Crest, Maya worked late into the night, reorganizing staff schedules, reviewing guest feedback, and setting new standards for how the hotel would operate moving forward. She was nervous, yes, but also determined. She had been given an opportunity she never imagined possible, and she wasn't going to waste it. Harvey sat alone in his apartment that night, staring at the email confirmation of his transfer. Part of him wanted to be angry, to feel victimized, to blame Elias for humiliating him. But the truth, the uncomfortable, undeniable truth, was that he had done this to himself. He had judged a man based on nothing but appearances. He had mocked him, belittled him, turned him into a joke for his own amusement. And in doing so, he had revealed something ugly about himself, something he hadn't wanted to see. The ranch job terrified him. The idea of manual labor, of losing his title, his status, his carefully constructed image, it all felt like a punishment. But somewhere, deep beneath the fear and the shame, there was a flicker of something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity, maybe even hope. Maybe this was a chance to become someone different, someone better, Someone who didn't need a fancy suit and a title to feel valuable. Time would tell. And as for Elias, he slept soundly that night in his upgraded suite, though he would have been just as content in the cheap room. Because for him, comfort had never been about thread count or square footage. It was about peace of mind, about knowing he had acted with integrity, about treating others the way he hoped to be treated. The next morning, he attended the livestock auction, bid on 3 prize Highland heifers, consulted with farmers from 2 different countries, and made deals that would impact rural communities for years to come. And no one there cared what he wore or how old his suitcase was. They cared about his knowledge, his fairness, and his handshake, because that, in the end, was what truly mattered. True wealth isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't look down on others or demand recognition. True wealth is quiet, dignified and rooted in respect. It lifts others up. It offers second chances. It sees value where others see nothing. And it never, ever judges a person by the boots they walk in, because you never really know who you're talking to. And by the time you find out, it might already be too late. If you've ever experienced something like this, or if you know someone who was judged unfairly because of how they looked, share your story in the comments below. Let's remind each other that respect costs nothing, but it's worth everything. And if you want more stories like this, stories that challenge how we see the world and the people in it, hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it.